Hey everybody, this is Russ from Retro Game Core. Today we're going to take a look at a newish front end called Cocoon, which had a big update yesterday. This one has a visual aspect to it, and it also has dual screen support. I think it looks really cool. You can navigate through all of your different games, and it has all this beautiful artwork that's included as well. There have been a lot of dual screen focused front ends coming out recently, including Isu, and I think Cocoon is a bit more at a mature state right now, although Isu is getting regular updates too. What I really like about this newest update is it allows you to migrate your information over from Emulation Station Desktop Edition, so you don't have to re-scrape all of your box art if you want to try this one out, which is what we're going to do here today. Best of all, it's completely free to set up, so without any further delay, let's go ahead and get started. Now, first thing you might be wondering is how does this compare to Emulation Station just in a broad sense? And so let's talk a little bit about this. This one is a more visual app. So as you navigate through, you're just going to have these icons. You will select your system and then see your game underneath. There is no option to change out any of this stuff to make it, for example, only show text or anything else like that. This is basically how it's structured. When it comes to scraping the data, you can either grab it from screenscraper.fr, which is the same thing Emulation Station uses, or you can use SteamGridDB, which allows you to pull up different artwork, which I think is kind of neat and makes it a little bit more unique. There are other apps like Beacon and Console Launcher that allow you to use that as well. You can also set this up so that you can have individual games on the front window as opposed to just systems in general. I'll show you how all that works later in this video. Now, Emulation Station is a bit of a different beast. It's a bit more structured in that you just have your folders, you add your games to it, and then they magically appear right there on the front screen. You can really change out the look and feel of Emulation Station because we've got dozens of different themes to choose from. This is just one right here that allows me to navigate through with both the text as well as the box art, and this one also has video support, so it'll show videos, whereas this new one does not. This one also has the ability to use a screensaver function, so I can use this to navigate through my systems and then actually launch my games directly from here if I want. When it comes to accessing your regular Android apps, you can do that in either of these. This one just has an app drawer built into it, which is really handy. This one you have to import using a specific tool for Android apps and emulators and games. The big difference I think between the two is the ability to use themes. As you can see right here, this is a different one called Canvas, which can change the look and feel of the device however you would like, and then also the fact that this one supports videos too. So I would say just in terms of overall customization, the ability to get through each of these and to change out how it looks, Emulation Station is a bit more robust, but if you're looking for something more visual and simple, then Cocoon is going to work out pretty nicely, as I'll show you here in the setup. Cocoon is also made for two-screen devices, so this experience is really nice once you have it all configured like I do, so you can navigate through and pick your game, and it's just a really nice two-screen experience altogether. It is worth noting that there is now a two-screen device companion app called ESDE Companion that allows you to have a very similar functionality here with Emulation Station. So if you are looking for a two-screen setup, you can actually have this set up with ESDE, and it's a very simple setup. It's literally just as easy as installing the ESDE Companion app and then launching it at the same time. So putting it together, you're probably wondering which one I prefer between the two, and I'm kind of torn. I like the visual aspect of this. I like the idea of putting the games on the home page itself. All that's really cool, and of course this one's still in beta, so it's probably got a lot more improvement that we'll see in the coming months. Okay, next we're going to set up the front end itself. Now this is my Retroid Pocket 6. I recently did a starter guide on this, and so this one right here has got all of the emulators already configured, and I also already set it up with Emulation Station Desktop Edition. So I've already got a front end running for this, and this has been my primary one for most devices for about 1.5 years, 2 years now. One of the benefits of this new Cocoon update is that it'll import in your old Emulation Station media files. So all of the box art and the other images that I've already scraped don't have to be scraped again if I just want to use these. So first thing you want to do is go to the Cocoon website. I'll have it linked down in the video description below, and then go to the releases section and then grab its latest release. And the front end itself is still in beta, and so it's going to have some bugs here and there. This is still an early look, but you can find it right here, 2.0 beta that was released yesterday. Once you're done downloading the app, you can click on it and then install it. And now once you open up the app, we'll go through this first time setup. So let's go ahead and continue. Next, by default, it wants to set it as the default home launcher. And that's because with two-screen devices, if you happen to not focus on the bottom screen, it can become a bit of a problem. And so if you are using something like the Thor and the Pocket DS, this is something that you could potentially do. For this video, we're not going to do it, especially because I'm setting this up on a single screen device. Next, it wants permissions to track your gameplay. This is optional, but if you would like for it to track how long you've been playing games, or if you want to use the Discord integrations they have built into the app, this is where you would go in and set those permissions. It's all really up to you, but I am going to grant it here so you can see what it looks like. You just go in here, click on the app, and then give it the permission. Next, it's going to ask, where are you going to put the data files for this? All your artwork, the application logs, and other cached data. You can either set it up in the internal storage of your device, which may make it a little bit snappier overall, or you could put it on a micro SD card, which means you could easily transfer it over. For this video, we're just going to put it on the internal storage, so I'm going to select the directory here, and then I'm just here in the internal storage, my Retroid Pocket 6. I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it Cocoon. Once I've made the folder, I'm going to select Use this folder, and then Allow Access. And you can also back up your data, which we'll talk about later. So now let's go to the next step. One of the great things about Cocoon is that you can use SteamGridDB, which is a really excellent platform to grab box art, but then also the standard screen scraper as well. Of note, with SteamGridDB, you need the API key, which you have to log into on their website with your Steam profile and then grab it from there. So on the website, go over to this right menu, and then there's a login option. Just click on that. It will then prompt you to sign into your Steam account, either with your account name or with a QR code. Once you've done that, you have to go and then give it permissions to sign in. And then it should take you back to the SteamGridDB website. You should then be able to click on this and then pick your Steam profile and then go into preferences. Once you click on that, you have to then close this menu so you can actually see what's underneath. And then in the API tab, you will then see your API key. I'm going to blur it here because I don't want you guys taking my data, but that's essentially all you have to do. Once you've selected it, you can then copy it, and then we're going to go back into the Cocoon setup. From there, paste in your API key and then hit save, and then you should be good. Now, setting up Screen Scraper is a lot easier. You just have to go to screenscraper.fr and then make a free username and password. And then once you have that, then just add it here. And then finally, with Retro Achievements, it's going to be a similar process as what we did with SteamGridDB. You'll have to go in and log in on their website and then grab the API key, which you can find within your settings and preferences. So in this case, once you're at retroachievements.org, you can click on the power button, which is the sign in button. And then once you're signed in, go into the settings section. There will be an authentication section, and then just grab the web API key. And that's it. Once you have that information, just go ahead and save it, and you should be good. On the next page, it's going to say that it has to download a list of different gaming platforms in order to work with the app itself. So this is going to be just a required portion. It's going to take a while to download all this information. For me, it took about a minute, but I think it's going to depend on server load and your internet speed. Once that's complete, we'll go to the next step, which is to figure out which kind of folder we want in the first place. And this depends on how large your library is. If you just want to see each game individually on the home screen, say you've only got a couple dozen games, then you could use the simple mode. But I would recommend smart folders if you're going to be using a larger library. That's going to organize everything by system. So you'll have a Nintendo DS folder and so on. And so in this case, I am going to go with my smart folders, and that's about it. Last thing they're going to ask for is some permissions, just to be able to access your files and be able to launch your ROMs. This is also very simple. Just click on it and then allow access, and then that's it. One final step is we need to point to our ROMs folder, and because I've already got this device set up with Emulation Station Desktop Edition, this is a pretty easy choice for me. I'm just going to pick that same ROM folder. So in this case, I've got it on my micro SD card, so I'm going to go to Disk and then to the ROMs folder right here. Once I'm in the folder, I'm going to select Use this folder and then Allow. From there, it's going to scan through that folder and see if you've got any games. You can see it found 736 in my entire library, so it's going to go through here and figure out which system corresponds to what. If any of your games don't get picked up, you can also add them manually, which we will do later in this video because Super Nintendo is a little bit wonky on this beta release. This scanning process can take quite some time. It took about 5 minutes altogether with my 736 games. And then finally, once the scan is done, we are ready to start playing with the front end. So let's enter. Okay, by default, this is what Cocoon is going to look like. I have dark mode enabled on my device, and so that's why we're seeing a black background. But you can see it's already created folders for a lot of our systems already, and it's already going to have the games inside too. So if we go into Dreamcast, you can see we have a bunch of the games here. It hasn't added the box art yet, but that's something that we're going to add here in a moment. Before that, let's just talk about navigation. So we have each of these folders, and like I mentioned already, you can go in and see your games. But in order to get into the settings menu, it's a little bit unintuitive. You have to go to an empty space like this, and then press the top button on your D-pad to open up this menu. It's going to be a lot bigger on the device, but this is just the way it's working with the screen capture right now. There are a few things we can do right out the gate. So for example, if we wanted to add an app to this home screen, we could just go into the apps right here. So say, for example, you wanted to have Google Drive, you could just set that right now. If you wanted to create a new folder and then make it customize and manually add your games, you can do that right here. And then finally on the bottom, we can actually open up the settings of the app itself. Now, unfortunately, the way this app works, I'm not able to bring up the settings menu to have it displayed in my video capture card. So we're going to have to move over to the studio room and do it directly on the device. Okay, so here we are. Now let's actually go into the settings menu. So I'm going to press the X button here. And as you can see, yes, it's a lot larger on the actual device itself. So let's go into the settings. We'll go through here one by one, but you can see right from the beginning, there's a theme option. It's following the system. So that's why it's in dark mode right now, because the device itself is in dark mode. But if you want it to be lighter, you can have that too. Personally, I have been using the light setting just because I think it looks a little bit like a Nintendo Wii in that regard. And so I like that overall look, but obviously it's going to be up to you. If you go the OLED route, it's going to be pure black. And so it gives you those nice inky blacks if you want that as well. Beyond that, you can change the accent color. So right now it's blue and you can see that around the highlight itself, but you could change that to any other color if you would like. You can also change out the wallpaper. So if you want a specific image to show behind everything, you can set that up within here too. Beyond that, you can also customize other things like the way the apps and the dock icons look. So you can go in here and change how rounded they are or how large they are altogether. In the hero settings, you can change out the style, and I have found that with dual screen devices like the Thor, by default, I don't really like the vignette look, and so I've been doing full screen. I'll show that when we get to the Thor itself. Regardless, there are quite a few things that you can do to customize the look and feel of this app if you want to get into it, and I'm assuming that this will also get future updates as well. Now, the next section is going to be really important when it comes to setting up your media in the first place. If you ever end up adding or removing games, then I would recommend rescanning your libraries right here, which is going to make it reflect in the app itself. It doesn't work in real time. This is where you can scrape your data, and you can also export the metadata if you would like to use it in another app like Emulation Station. We can also import our Emulation Station data, which we'll do in a minute, but before that, I want to make sure that we have all our folders correctly reflected. And one that I'm seeing that is not listed here is my Super Nintendo system. And this makes sense because I use a specific folder for my Super Nintendo games, which is called SNES-NA, which is how they name it in Emulation Station. That's for North American Super Nintendo games. And it appears that this app doesn't account for that folder name, and so that's why it's not showing up, but now we can add it manually. So up here you can see there's a little plus button, so we can press on the top button here and it'll show the listing of all the different systems that it supports, and so we can manually add any of these. So let's go all the way down to Super Nintendo and add that. Once I've selected it, I'll press the top button again, and that's going to now save it right here. Let's go ahead and open this one up, and this is going to give us quite a few different options. You can see the first thing is you can choose the default emulator for it. I do use RetroArch and the SNES 9X core, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. And then next you can choose your ROMs folder, and this is pretty important. So it already took me to my SD card in my ROMs folder because I had chosen that earlier, and so now I can just find the SNES-NA folder right here. There is a Super Nintendo one right here, but that will default to the European ROM, so that's why I choose the North American one. Once I have that set, I can select use this folder, allow access, and that's it. Now just press that top button again to save it, and we should be good. While you're in here, I would also recommend going through system by system, making sure it's pointing to the right emulator. For example, here with Arcade MAME, by default it's set to MAME 2003, but I use the 2003 Plus ROM set. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to change this to 2003 Plus. Once I've got that set, I will press that top button again to save it. Most of these are going to be the default of what I use, but I found with GBA it's going to VBA next, but I prefer MGBA, so I'm going to select that one and then save it. But honestly, everything else seems to be correct. It even will pick up if you have a third-party app already installed that isn't RetroArch. For example, here with Sony PlayStation, it knows I have DuckStation installed and it already chose that by default, so that's pretty handy. So at this point, I'm happy with how this is all associated. I've got all the correct folders here, so now I'm going to go back to rescan all libraries so that it can find all those Super Nintendo games. And so it's going to go pretty quickly through the ones it's already scanned, but once it gets to Super Nintendo, you can see right here, it's kind of waiting a moment and you'll probably see a bunch of new games pop up. And so there we go, it's found those 62 games right there. And now if we go back into the main menu, you can see that there's a Super Nintendo folder, and here are all of my games. So now that we've got all our folders set up, let's scrape some of this box art. You've got two options. You can just scrape it from the internet, or you can migrate it from ESDE if you've already set that up previously. Let's talk about scraping first. So you'd want to go into this folder right here, then make sure that it's scraping the artwork and the metadata, and then you can choose what the sources are, SteamGridDB, and then also Screen Scraper. Within here, you can actually change priority. So if you wanted Screen Scraper up top, so this would be the primary source, you can change that here. Personally, I like the Steam Grid DB option, so we're going to leave that up top. Below that, you can choose which games you're going to scrape. So by default, it's going to just scrape anything that's missing data, but you could also just have it do all games regardless, or you can choose individual platforms. Once you're all set up, you can then start scraping. It's going to take quite some time, depending on the size of your library, to go to the internet, find that artwork, and then bring it back. And so it's really going to be up to you, but thankfully it happens in the background, so you can just kind of leave your device and do something else. Now, the other way is to migrate from Emulation Station. That's what we're going to do here today, just because I've already scraped all that box art, it's a lot faster. First thing it's going to ask is the Emulation Station Desktop Edition folder, just to be able to pull all that data. So let's go in here, and that's going to be on my microSD card in the ESDE folder. So I'm just going to select that and allow. From there, it's going to ask, what do you want to use for your box art? Do you want to use covers, or would you rather use a screenshot, and so on. Same thing with the hero or the fan art or the background image. You can use all sorts of different options. And then same thing with the logo. It's going to be the marquee. By default, I think that these are all set up correctly, so we're just going to go with that. Below that, we can choose to either import the metadata, that's going to be the information about the game in the first place, like the description, what year it was launched, or we can also import the media only. So that's just going to be the box art and so on. And then finally, we're just going to import everything. This means it's going to take all of those images and then move them into the Cocoon folder. It's going to duplicate them, so it is going to take a little bit additional space on your card or your internal storage, but it is going to at least not require you to go through the internet and then re-download everything. So this is the option we're going to choose, and I found that in general, it does take quite a while to import everything, maybe about 15-20 minutes, still a lot faster than actually having to get it from the internet. Okay, it took about 20 minutes altogether, but you can see that it's done and it imported in over 2,000 pieces of media. So now let's just go back to the main menu and see what everything looks like. Now, if we go into any of these folders, you can see that we have the box art. So everything has been moved over. None of this was scraped from the internet. It was just taken from my own Emulation Station. You might have a couple missing, and this is probably because I didn't properly scrape it with Emulation Station Desktop Edition. Some of my 3DS games are named incorrectly. So we can actually fix this on the fly. Let's do it really quickly. So hover over a game, then press the top button, and then go down to Edit. And within here, you've got three different image options. There's the icon, which is going to be the box art that you'll see right here in the front. Then they have the hero. This is going to work with the dual screen setup, and also if we set this up as a single screen device, which we'll do later. And then the logo goes over the hero. It's like this nice blend of artwork. Below that, you can see it has the name of the game, and then you've got a couple other options, like being able to launch it only on the external display or have it included in your favorites, or you can override the default app. For this, we're just going to change out the icon. So let's go into here. We get two different options, Steam Grid DB or Screen Scraper. Let's go into Steam Grid DB. You can see it found 21 images. We got a bunch of them here, all sorts of different ideas. And so let's just go with this one right here. I think it looks pretty good. We can do the same thing with the hero and logo. Let's do that really quickly. So I'm going to go in again to Steam Grid DB. Got 10 different images here. What I generally like to do is pick something that's not so busy and then add the logo on top of that. So I like the look of this one here. Let's go with that. From there, we'll go into logo, and then again, same thing here, Steam Grid DB. It's going to give us a bunch of different options, so I'm going to do that. So the way this works is that logo is going to go over that hero, and so that's why I try to make a nice blend between the two. Once you're happy with that, you can press the top button again to save it, and then you should now see it right here. So you either could go through and scrape these individually, or if you've got a bunch like in 3DS, I could just re-scrape this entire folder, and anything that's missing media will actually grab it. Now, we can do a lot in terms of customizing the front screen, but let's go through the settings still. We've got a couple things I haven't talked about yet. So going back into the settings here again, there's an integration section. Within here, if you haven't already added your Steam Grid DB and all the other information, you can do that here. You can also set this up so that it has a Discord-rich presence. It'll say what game you're playing in Discord. I'm personally not going to set this up. I don't like having people see what I'm doing on Discord, but if you want to do that, you can. Now, under Systems and Advanced, this is going to have a couple different additional options. One is single screen mode. So let's actually try that one out first. We're going to turn that on and then go back to the main menu. Now you can see there's something up above. That's the hero and banner that we were talking about before. When using a dual screen device, it's going to show it on two separate windows. With a single screen device like this, you can choose to have them show both at once. The only downside of this is that it makes everything down below it look pretty darn small. But say we go back into the 3DS folder. And now if we navigate over to our Legend of Zelda, the one that we scraped, you can see that this now shows the hero and that logo. And same thing thing with these other ones that have already been imported in from Emulation Station. So all this looks very nice. And so already it looks like a pretty neat setup, you know, that we can just kind of navigate through these icons and see the art above it. And so it's really going to be up to you and what you prefer, but you can either have it show just as a single screen where you have both of these at once, or you can just see the icons themselves. Further down in the settings section, we also have the ability to just go right into the Android settings, and we can also adjust the sound. If you want to have like specific sound effects and background music in a certain volume, you can adjust that. And everything in this app gives you a little bit of haptic feedback, which I actually like, but if you don't want that, you can turn that off here. And there are a ton of different sound options here. You can change out every single sound if you would like, and you can even set up like different times when different sounds are going to be playing, depending on what you want. Now, one thing that's really important, and we'll talk about this next, is that you can change out the grid layout. So you can change out how all of the games look and what the folders look like, and you can also back that up and restore it if you would like. So this is really handy. If you've got everything perfectly configured, you can then back it up and then use that on a different device in the future so you don't have to go through this all again. And honestly, that's about it when it comes to settings. You can also go and read more about the developers or also support them if you would like to donate a little bit of money. All this is free. So now I want to talk about organizing each of these folders. I'm going to switch it back to the dual screen mode. That way all of this is a lot bigger and easier to see, but we're going to go and actually change the way that each of these folders look and the organization of them in the first place. So first thing, I'm going to go back into settings, and then under here, I'm going to turn off the single screen mode. That way we can see all of these a little bit more easily. So this is what you want to do. You want to hover over one of the folders, press that top button again, and then go down into edit. Within here, you've got a bunch of options very similar to how it is with the box art. So you can set your icon. This is going to be what it's going to show instead of this folder right here, or you could actually just change this folder and change it to a different icon. You can also upload custom stuff if you're into that too. Beyond that, we can also set up a hero and a logo. Again, this is going to be for dual screen devices, but let's start with the full icon. So I'm going to click on that. And then for each of these, you're going to want to use Steam Grid DB because Screen Scraper is not going to work at a platform level, but this one does. I got to say that the choices here are a little bit slim pickings depending on the system. For example, with Dreamcast, you've got like this one that has Nintendo Switch Online at the bottom right, so that's a little odd. You've got this Dreamcast one, you've got a couple other options here, but that's all you really have to choose from. Now, I'm just going to go with this one, but you know, obviously you can pick whatever you want, and you could always upload your own too if you would prefer that. Let's keep going. So within the hero, we're going to do the same thing, Steam Grid DB, and then find a background. We've only got a couple options here, so I'm going to pick that one. And then finally, the logo itself. And because the hero is a little bit darker, I like to use a white logo. That way it's going to stand out between the two. And so that's it. I can now press the X button. It's going to save it. And so now, instead of having just a folder icon with the Dreamcast controller, I can now go into that. Let's do another one. Let's do GameCube this time. Same thing. I'm going to go in here and then edit. And then I'm going to pick my full icon and then Steam Grid DB. And then I've got a bunch of logos to choose from. I've got 14 this time around. Now, some of these are not going to be a really good fit like these ones right there, but you know, something like this actually looks pretty good. So I'm just going to choose that one. And then I'm going through also and adding the hero as well as the logo. And that's really about it. And so this is what my overall setup is like this, and I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to press the X button. It's going to save it. Now I have found one bug where after you save it, sometimes it doesn't actually save. And so I've had to go through some of these folders multiple times and then redo the entire setup again. I'm not sure what's going on in terms of just how it's saving it, but this is something that probably happens maybe 25% of the time, at least as far as I've noticed. So this time I've gone through and added them again. I'm going to save it, and then hopefully, yeah, this time it actually did work. So that's about it when it comes to setting up this front row. You can obviously go through system by system and then adjust each of them. I have found that for some of them, for example with Neo Geo, this one's been a little bit hard to scrape for because there's not a lot of assets within Steam Grid DB. And when you search for it by the word Neo Geo like this, it doesn't really show much. In fact, it shows like this other game, Neo Geo Cup 98. So what you can do at that point is you can tap on this and then change it. And what I found is by typing SNK Neo Geo, that does a little bit better of a job. So if we save it like that, and then we go and we scrape it again, this time it actually does show the Neo Geo folder. So that's a little bit handy. You can also go in here within the folder name and change that right then and there. And that way when you scrape it, it's always going to use that name instead of just the word Neo Geo. It's all up to you. I am hoping that as a result of this app, we're going to have more and more resources to choose from with these three options over time. And so essentially that's what you need to do to set up your front page. The other thing you can do is just adjust these manually and put them wherever you would like. So if you want to have a row of handheld devices, maybe a row of arcade things, and then more modern systems, you can all set that up here. The other thing to talk about is this dock down below. So this is really handy. This is going to be your app drawer. So you can just grab your apps anytime right here. In addition, by default, you can set up 4 different options. If I choose one of these and say, okay, I want this one to be Google Chrome. And so now I've got Chrome added to the dock, and I can do the same thing with other options. Say, for example, I want to have the Google Play Store right here. Let's say I also want to add Game Native, which does not have support in this app just yet. I can then add that here, so I can then grab all my PC games directly. And then finally, I found that just adding my Android settings cog at the very right is always super handy. So you've already got a dock set up like that. So this is the essence of how Cocoon works in terms of just the overall layout and how to customize it yourself. And I did a bunch of this yesterday, so let me show you what it looks like on a fully set up device. Okay, here's my other Retroid Pocket 6. You can see I've already set this one up. So I've added all the folders, everything looks really nice, and I can go through obviously and also pick the game. And I've also gone and organized each of these systems in a way that makes more sense to me. The top row is all my handheld systems all the way up to Nintendo 3DS, and then I also put my arcade over there. I wasn't really sure where to put them. The second row is all my classic systems that I run through RetroArch, so you can see each of those right there. And then finally, the bottom row is going to be the bit more modern systems. So I was thinking things that were released in 2000 and beyond. PSP, GameCube, PS2, Wii, Wii U, and Switch. And so now I can just go through, choose my system, then find my game, and then launch it from here. And the way this is set up, I can still, exit out of the game, and it will take me back to Cocoon. So it's all a pretty handy setup, and I haven't even set this as my home launcher yet, but I could definitely do that right now. If you do want to do that, you'd want to go into your Android settings, which I've added to the dock right here, go into apps, and then go and then find the default apps, and then home, and then you would want to change that to Cocoon. And so that's it. Now, anytime that I start up my device, I will then have access to this overall navigation menu. I think it looks great. My only complaint is that I have found that it's sometimes hard to see which game is which. I can see these things, and they're a little bit small, but it's really hard to tell, that's Jordan versus Bird, this is Mega Man 2, and so on. So that does make it a little bit odd. Now, within the appearance setting, there is an option to change the app icon style, but this only changes the scale of the image inside of it, not the actual size of the icon. So you can see the controller will get a little bit bigger. It's going to fill it out a little bit more, but that's about it. It doesn't actually make the icon itself any easier to read. So personally, I'd like to have the ability to make these a little bit larger. Another thing I would like to see as well is maybe a flashcard option where I can press one of these buttons and it'll flip this around and show the metadata, the information about the game itself, what year it was released, and so on. The things that you can see within Emulation Station, I'd like to have that hidden, but be able to access it if I want. Now, one neat thing you can do with these games, if you press the top button, you can then add it to your home screen. So you can see right here, I now have the Batman NES games. So you can mix and match all of this stuff. If you want just one dedicated game or a row of dedicated games, you could set all of that up right here, and then it'll launch the game appropriately in whatever app you've already set it up with. To get rid of it, you just press the top button again and then remove, and that's it. Now, Cocoon is made with a dual screen device in mind, like the AYN Thor. So let's check out what it looks like here. I've already set it up last night. So it's a very similar setup. As you can see, I kind of did it multiple times just to make sure I was doing it correctly. But now you can see on the bottom, we're actually getting the hero and the logo down below as well. And it's not just in the folder. If we go into any of these, we can also see the game too. The nice thing about this setup is that when you start up a game, it will actually keep this on the top display, and then you will see the information down below. And I think that's pretty handy. If anything, it's just a nice reminder of what game you're playing. You can just look down and be like, oh yeah, Contra Advance. Now, another cool thing you can do with the dual screen device is that you can flip them by pressing this button. And so you can navigate on the bottom and then see everything up top. And at first I thought this is going to be a little bit weird because it gives me less room to actually go through my games. But it's actually pretty neat to be able to see them up top as you navigate through. And when you launch it, you can also choose which screen it's going to launch on. So we'll press this top button again, and then you can select launch, and then it'll be top screen, bottom screen, we can select top screen. So I can really see the appeal of using these on a two-screen device because there's just a lot of customization options as we navigate through our games. Now, there are some things that I find a little bit jarring about this. For example, as I navigate through the games on the Thor, you can see that the screen kind of shifts a little bit to the right as you go through. And I found this just overall movement to be a little bit too much. I would rather just instantly show up right there on the screen. I get that they're trying to animate everything, but this feels a little bit odd. So personally, I would like the ability to go into the settings and then turn that off. If I don't want to see the animation as I'm navigating through, instead it just shows up instantly. The fact that it flashes white every time we do that is just a little bit distracting to me. too. Now earlier I mentioned this hero settings and how it's set to vignetting by default, but I set it to full screen. Let me show you what the vignetting looks like and why I haven't really been enjoying that. And so this is the vignetting effect, and you can have it on the top or the bottom. I don't like that. I'd rather just see the full screen, and so that's what I've been choosing to use instead. For me, I think that just having the full screen like this just looks a lot better overall, and so this is what I prefer. And so there you go. That's a quick look at Cocoon and how it's all shaping up, and I think it's looking pretty great. I'm really excited to see what they do with future releases as well once it gets out of beta, but as it stands right now, I think if you're looking for a nice visual way to go through your two-screen or even single-screen device, this has got a lot of neat perks to it. I love the fact that you can choose your assets from either Steam Grid DB or from Screen Scraper, and you can also import them from Emulation Station. Those are all really handy. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. As always, thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you found this helpful, and we will see you next time. Happy gaming.